Welcome to another episode of Waves of Wisdom. Today with me is a guest and somebody I respect very much, my first NLP coach, Mr. Luke Salway, all the way from Australia and currently lives in Thailand. He is the CEO of Coachology and MCC level ICF coach and NLP trainer. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thank you. Yes, as we say in Thailand, Sawadee Cup. It's really, really great to see you again. When was it that we met, Iaz? Was that about 7 or 8 years ago?
Yes, exactly. We met about 7-8 years back in Maldives at the beautiful Kurumba Village, the first resort, and you took a
Yes.
session for our leaders on NLP, and that was a really eye-opening session. So after that, you have also grown, I think, in your business and in coaching itself. How is life treating you over there?
It's great here, Iaz, and I must say, first of all, thank you for the opportunity for us to reconnect today, and thank you for that opportunity 7 or 8 years ago. What a thrill it was for me to go to the Maldives for the first time, to do a 2-day leadership workshop utilizing these tools and techniques of NLP. And then, of course, to enjoy the beautiful Maldives there for another 4 days or so. It was truly a magical experience. Since then, back in that time, Coachology was pretty much just born. I'd been working with another coach and training provider prior to that, which was a great way for me to build up my skills, both as a coach and a trainer and facilitator, but also as an entrepreneur and business owner. And so it's my wife and I started Coachology. My wife, her name is Coach Christy. She's from Thailand. We've been together about 10 years and we started Coachology, around 7 years ago now. And best decision ever to start our own business, to attract the kinds of clients that we want to work with and to have positive impact all around the world. I did go back to the Maldives about 2 years ago, believe it or not, and had another fantastic time over there. And, still to this day, I'm running leadership development programs. And most of the time I'm using these tools and techniques of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, also known as NLP. For your listeners who maybe have not heard of NLP before, I can break it down really simply.
Yeah.
NLP is a set of tools and techniques and strategies to improve our communication. Now, we first must realize that communication is happening 2 times. First is our internal communication, the way that we think, the way that we make decisions. Even our emotional intelligence is derived by the meaning that we create or the way that we think about life's events and situations. So NLP tools and techniques help us to improve that internal communication, to give us greater clarity, to give us that kind of strategic thinking, to be able to step back and look at our thoughts and our emotions and our behavior, and then to choose a more empowered way to respond to life's events and situations. So all of that's happening internally. And then, of course, the second element of communication is the way that we communicate with the world around us. And obviously, if you are in leadership, you need to be able to influence your team. You need to be able to motivate and inspire your team. You need to resolve conflict with your team. And so all of this is examples of external communication. So NLP gives us all of these tools, techniques, and strategies to improve internal and external communication. If you can remember all of those years ago, can you remember what was it specifically about NLP that you enjoyed? Can you remember one of the tools or the techniques?
Yes, definitely. First of all, it was my introduction to NLP as a concept, and I think it was really eye-opening, and it helped me to realize that actually the language we speak to ourselves or we speak to others might help to program their mind, so program their brain. So I think that was a really eye-opening thing. And one of the things I still remember and I carry around with me from that training is, even with my kids, I practice that when we want to approach someone, approach at the state they are or the level they are, rather than, coming from another level. Go to their frequency and start with the language which they will understand immediately to divert, then divert their attention and take them with you on a journey to where you want them to be.
Yep, beautiful. And so that's something we could do even more consciously on a day-to-day basis. I'm mainly working with middle management leaders up to senior executives, and everyone has a boss, as I'm sure you know. Even if I'm CEO, there's always a group CEO or the president or the board. We all have a boss always. And so the way we communicate to the boss would be very, very different than how we communicate to our children, as an obvious example. And we already know how to adjust that. But in our day-to-day working environment with different stakeholders and different communication styles across different cultures and nationalities, we can also consciously adjust our communication to best match that person that we're communicating with, in order that we can create win-win. And so NLP helps us to do that a little bit more consciously, as you've had that good results with your kids.
Yes, exactly. And then it also helps us to, I think, to not only communicate better, but also connect with others better.
Yes.
Because human connection is part of communication. The most important anchor for communication is human connection, isn't it? So it helps, I think, these techniques, knowing that actually we can use language to actually reframe, or the language we speak has a profound impact on our own thinking and the thought process of others, was really an eye-opener.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so one of those techniques that I think we learned together there in the Maldives was this soft skill we called rapport. So rapport means trust and connection. And it's that ability to really and truly connect with another human. And, I say this all the time in my leadership courses. Maybe 20 years ago, you could lead with a big stick, right? Or a whip, and you could say, work harder, work faster. And
Yeah.
maybe you could get away with that 20 years ago, but that clearly does not work now, right? What happens now in leadership, if we push too hard, what happens? The staff say, bye-bye, see ya, right? We're just pushing them away. So in order to lead effectively these days, it takes influence.
Yes.
And having this rapport, having this trust, this connection, and this respect that is earned, right? Just because I'm the boss, BOSS, just because I'm boss does not automatically assume that I have the respect, especially for this younger generation. So we can consciously use some of these NLP tools and techniques to authentically, build rapport with the people that we're communicating with on a regular basis, whether it is our staff or our peers or our boss, even our husband and wife and kids. We can practice this soft skill in order that we can connect with people, because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And I think at some level we do crave that authentic connection.
Exactly. And especially at this era, I think one of the things people are suffering from is loneliness and the disconnection from the society and the person-to-person human connection, due to the advancement in social media and digital and now AI and all those things. And I think there hasn't been a more important time than currently, where people need to be aware of NLP techniques like you are teaching.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Iaz. And I'm guilty of using AI. Just before our session today, I was looking to create an infographic explaining a new coaching concept that I'm working on. And then it wasn't following the instructions and it didn't do what I said. And I tried to do it more clearly. Anyway, that says more about my lack of technological intelligence. But beyond that, what I'm seeing more and more, and keep in mind, I'm traveling all around the region, facilitating leadership workshops. I was in Cambodia early this year, Saudi Arabia last year, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, of course, all in the neighborhood of Thailand here. I've been to Bangladesh and so on. And what I see time and time again is that, straight talk and clear communication can prevent and or resolve 99% of all problems.
Yes.
And what I'm talking about is this like real talk, this real communication, not just by a chat or an email, but an actual, face-to-face conversation. Now that can be done digitally. We can use technology. Technology is a tool that can be utilized to make our life easier. Many of us, though, are falling into the trap where the technology is using us, right? Especially if you look at any of these social media companies, they want our attention on this device. Every time, every hour that is spent looking at the device, they're literally earning money, right? Through advertisements and so on. So that's when the technology is using us. So, and I share these examples in my workshop. I'll say to the team of leaders, who can remember that thing from a few years ago? It started with C. What was it? Yeah, COVID. Remember COVID? And then remember how the world went down into lockdown, right? And then, of course, everyone says, yeah, I remember that. Now, of course, some industries really struggled. Hospitality really, really struggled. But I remember here in Thailand, they were looking at some creative strategies where they were doing, staycation, where people living in Thailand could stay in the hotels for much, much cheaper. Yeah. Hotels were doing the quarantine. Remember the early days? You had to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yes, of course.
And they were setting up like taking gym equipment to people to their room. But beyond some of those industries that were really, really affected, like hospitality, the reason most companies survived, and of course not everyone did survive, but the ones that did, how did they navigate this uncertainty, right? It was something that was outside of everyone's control, right? Here we are, we're locked down, we're working from home, and now as leaders, we have to lead our teams from home, right? And so the only way that those companies that not only survived but thrived was with straight talk and clear communication. Now, I'm not saying it was easy. What I'm saying is they found a way. People were starting to use MS Teams for the first time. They're using Zoom for the first time, or they're using Riverside for the first time. Whatever the software is, we figured out a way to continue this communication with our teams. And the companies that did that quickly, right, were able to not only survive, but be able to thrive. I remember, there's a little cafe down the road from where I live in Bangkok. And this little cafe, it's normally quite popular, but of course, lockdown, right? And so no one could dine out anymore. But they must have had 20 of these Grab motorcycle. The Grab is the food delivery here in Thailand. They would have 20 of them lined up the street to deliver their food to the customers. So what I know was that they were very agile. They were very proactive. They updated their menus. They did whatever they needed to do. They bought special packaging to keep the food warm, right? And they did all of this stuff internally with their teams and then executed very, very quickly. So they did not have a dip through lockdown. If anything, their business improved because they found the time to have those important conversations with the straight talk and the direct communication.
Yeah. You're right. Communication is such an important part, and I can relate very much to what you're saying. We were not used to, even though we had tools like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, we were not really utilizing it on a day-to-day basis. But then it became like the norm, right? It became. But I think it also opened up a lot of doors and breaks barriers. Even so now, even like the what we say the Gen Z, they cannot actually differentiate sometimes between the physical interactions and the digital instructions through platforms, because they grow up with this, right? So they can feel the same way. Maybe they, but it's nothing like seeing someone and speaking to them. I mean, physically, when you meet someone and speak, there's some kind of vibe, energy around, isn't it? So that 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 human beings, like you said, they crave for that, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So I don't know that anything will replace the actual human to human connection by being in the same room with someone. Certainly to get that vibe that you're talking about, or said another way, the empathy. Now, coming back to some of those NLP techniques, such as rapport, this ability to create trust and connection, body language, right? Our body language, how we use our body, accounts for 55% of our communication. 55. So these leaders who are trying to run an inspirational, motivational session with their teams, and everyone's got their cameras turned off, right,
Yes.
is insane to me. Here's the the leader. Okay, team, we've got a big target to hit this quarter. I need everyone to work really, really hard, but everyone's got their camera turned off, including the leader themselves. Like they're losing more than half of their ability to motivate and influence their subordinates. Right now,
Exactly.
I get it that sometimes the internet drops out, or there's a blackout, or the dog chewed on the internet cable or whatever. And, in those kinds of situations, we want to do our best to at least maintain that body language. Our facial expressions are communicating so much.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, will it ever replace being in the same room with someone? I don't know, but one thing is for sure, these NLP techniques help me navigate through lockdowns. And think about it, right? My traditional business model is face-to-face training, like we did in the Maldives. And then literally overnight, we can't go outside, we can't travel. And I remember saying to my wife, okay, we went and sat on the balcony. We're in our condo in Bangkok, and it is eerily quiet. The quietest I've ever heard Bangkok. No hum of the traffic, no beeping of the horns, nothing, just silence and birds. It was really wild. And we
Yes.
sat on the balcony, and I said, right, let's consider the worst case scenario, which they call black hat, like looking at it from the worst case scenario, just trying to be detached and just looking at it from data and fact. And so I said to the wife, how much money do we have in the bank? What kind of assets do we have that if we needed to sell, we could sell? Basically, how long have we got before we really need to get worried, right? So we crunched a few numbers, and no problem. We had at least a year or two without having to worry about anything, right? So we said, okay, done. We don't have to panic. We don't, nothing's freaking out. So then we asked the question, and this is the NLP question, what can we do, right? What could be good about this situation? And so we had a little brainstorm, and then we talked about it, and we were in the beautiful quietness of Bangkok. And then we said, well, let's try and do something online. And as you said a moment ago, Zoom and MS Teams were hardly even a thing back then. And I'm a non-techie kind of guy, right? But, I figured it out. And within the first week of lockdown, I ran a free webinar on positive thinking in uncertain times. And I think I had about 200 people register for that event. Keeping in mind, this is within the first week of lockdown. So once we did our brainstorm, I just committed to take action, and then I'll figure it out. I still didn't know how to use Zoom and do all of that kind of jazz, but I figured it out. And at the end of that session, I had 3 phone calls from 3 big companies in Asia. And the conversation went something like this. Hey, Luke, that was pretty good. can you do something for our leadership team? Because not only are they working from home, they have to lead their teams from home who are also at home. And of course, my standard answer is yes, I can do that, not knowing how, but knowing that I could figure it out.
Yes.
And so we ended up with these three big multinational organizations for the next 6 months. I did online leadership programs, online coaching programs for their leaders. Because remember, lockdown went a lot longer than just 2 weeks, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
so because of that, we did our first session, we got some feedback, we adjusted, we evaluated, we made it better, and then they were still very, very happy. And I remember, saying to some of the organizers in these companies, can we tell the participants that they have to turn their camera on? Which in the early days was okay. Of course, these days, though, I give up because technically they're not my staff. I can't force them to do anything. But yeah, doing webinars and leadership programs, and especially executive coaching. In addition to the NLP, I'm also doing executive coaching. And according to statistics from the ICF, 80% of executive coaching conversations are done online.
Yes. Exactly.
And so this is an example how technology can help us.
Yes. Sometimes people even prefer to do it online because it's more convenient, and then they can reach out to anybody they want from any part of the world. Sometimes,
Anybody.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I think you are very right. And then how the NLP techniques can help somebody to actually grow themselves or become an expert in the area where they want, or something like that. How will these NLP techniques can help?
Excellent question. Thank you. So let me just rewind a little bit and explain some of the fundamentals of NLP and how it came about, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what NLP is and how it originated, and some people call it, like voodoo, or it can be used unethically. One thing is true: the tools and techniques of NLP are very, very powerful, and people have used it in the past unethically. And by that, I mean they have used these tools and techniques in a manipulative way. Very simply, to manipulate someone is win, lose. And that's not cool, right? We don't teach that methodology. We don't go down. In fact, we spend quite some time telling all of our students that it must be used in a win-win mindset, a win-win philosophy, because that's what true influence is. Influence is win-win. And so that's the first thing I want to clarify. The second is that the two guys that created NLP, they didn't just create it out of thin air. They didn't just kind of sit down and brainstorm these tools and techniques. No, they didn't do that. What they did, and this is about 40 years ago, back in the 70s or so, maybe 50 years ago now, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
What they did was they actually modeled world-class performers in many different fields of human behavior. So, for example, they modeled some of the world's best CEOs. They modeled some of the world's best psychologists, psychiatrists, and hypnotherapists. Now, by modeling, I simply mean that they observed these people's behavior. These people were the best of the best at that time. And as they observed how they were able to achieve excellent results in these specific fields, basically they kind of elicited the strategy, or said another way, the recipe on how they were able to achieve those results. You see, it's really interesting. If you go to any of these 5-star hotels in the Maldives or here in Thailand, and if you work your way into the kitchen and you go and speak to the executive chef and you say, "Oh, chef, that dish is delicious. How do you cook that?"
Yeah.
Well, an executive chef with many, many years experience, they'll say, "I don't know. I just do it," right? Because they're so good at what they do, they actually become unconsciously competent. which means they're so good, competent at what they do, they don't even think about it anymore because it's like a habit. They're doing it on autopilot because they're so good at it. But what these creators of NLP did, because they were speaking to the world's best of the best, if you ask them, how do you get that result? They will do the same thing. Oh, I don't know. I just do it because I've been doing it for 30 or 40 years. So they use this process called modeling, which is a combination of observation, interviews, taking notes, watching what they do step by step in order and sequence, exactly like a recipe. And these areas of these skills are in these soft skills of human behavior, such as building rapport, such as smart goal setting, such as conflict resolution, and a dozen different coaching tools and techniques to help get specific results. So, in theory, if this is the strategy to do that specific skill, if I follow that strategy or follow that recipe, I will get the same or at least similar results. And so that's what NLP is. It's a set of 30 or 40, and including the master's level, maybe 50 different tools and techniques, mostly linked to communication. So again, how do we communicate with ourselves to create empowered thinking, empowered decisions, empowering belief systems, right? And then how do we communicate with the world around us? And so in that sense, that's a good thing, right? Because these recipes, these strategies were modeled from the world's best of the best. And so what that means is I don't need to try and reinvent the wheel. If I want to learn a specific skill, then I can go and learn those techniques from NLP. So it will accelerate my leadership development. It'll improve my communication, my ability to influence, and my ability to inspire my teams. It helps us to think strategically. So I can think about the needs of the business. I can plan accordingly. I can improve my delegation. So the limits are almost limitless with how we can apply NLP. And of course, the first place to start is always going to be with ourselves. So at the beginning of every single workshop that I facilitate, whether it's a 1 hour energizer for, I did a gig down in Pattaya, also here in Thailand, with for Exxon, the big oil and gas company, 400 people. And I did like a 2 hour energizer about having a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And this is so important, right? And so having a growth mindset is to simply be aware that there are things that I don't know, that if I did know could help me in my personal and professional development journey. So if I am doing a leadership session and I'm talking about the growth mindset, and I'm talking about that in the first 20 minutes of my session, and I'll ask everyone, who here has heard of NLP before? Usually about 20% of the room put their hand up. So I say, okay, so for everyone else, you do not know about NLP. Is that correct? And they kind of go, yeah. And I said, all right, well, now you know NLP is something, and I can tell you it's about some communication techniques for your internal communication and decision making, and your external communication, your ability to communicate to others. So now you know that you don't know. You know it's NLP and it's something about communication, but you haven't learned any tools yet. And by the end of our workshop together, whether it's half a day, 1 day, or 2 days, I'll say you will know some specific NLP tools that will help you in your personal and professional development. And so this concept of a growth mindset isn't just for NLP, it's about everything. There are
It is about belief, right? Because I also speak a lot about growth mindset, and
yes,
one of the things I realize it to be, it is about the belief. It is how some people don't believe that things can be improved. That's why they are there. They are the way they are, and they believe that they are in a fixed mindset, right? So
exactly.
they cannot actually think beyond what they see. Like you said, they don't think that what they don't know can actually make them better if they know it. I think
Exactly.
that's the secret. And I think one of the persons I follow a lot, and especially during COVID, I started reading his book, and I think this book was actually recommended by you. So I bought it somewhere. I think you mentioned something like this is a kind of a reference book for NLP. This is Unlimited Power from Tony Robbins. And
Yeah.
Tony Robbins talks a lot about, the power of changing your state to change
Yes.
your mindset. Can you
Yes.
elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
NLP
So for
techniques?
those that don't know, Tony Robbins is one of the world's number one trainers and coaches, and his background is NLP. So he, with the two creators, Bandler and Grinder, the two creators who modeled these techniques of NLP, Tony Robbins was a student of theirs. So Tony Robbins went through the process as a student. Then Tony Robbins became an NLP trainer, just exactly like what I'm doing. He was doing NLP training, and he did that for a number of years. And so, of course, he knew NLP from the inside and out. And then, so over time, Tony wanted to basically take these tools and techniques and share it with a wider audience, right? So then he kind of went a bit more mainstream. He does events now with 20,000 people in them all over the world. And one of the primary concepts that he's teaching, which again is the principle of NLP, is our ability to manage our emotional state, right? And our emotional state is simply our feeling at this moment in time. And so Tony will simply refer to it as state, right? Are you in an empowered state or a disempowered state? Now, interestingly, our emotional state is like a synergy between the thoughts that we have moment to moment and how we use our physiology, which is a fancy way of saying our body. So there's a connection between our body and our thinking. And the synergy between the two equals our emotional state, which is our feeling at this moment in time. Now, where this gets interesting is that our emotional state determines our behavior. And our behavior is simply what we do, right? Including actions that we take and our communication, right?
Exactly.
And of course, our behaviors, what we do, the actions that we take, create our results. So, to break it down very, very simply, our emotional state, how we feel at this moment in time, determines our results. So, if we want to get better results in our life, we need to better learn how to manage our emotional state, right? And think about it. I've got an analogy for you. Remember those times when you wake up in the morning and you just feel a little bit blah, right? For whatever reason, you didn't sleep well, the kids or the cat, the dog was noisy, weird dreams, whatever it was, you wake up and you just feel a bit. Now, for most of us, unless we do something different, we'll take that mood, we'll take that emotional state with us throughout the day. And because we feel blur, our thinking is blur, our behavior and actions is blur, and then, of course, our results, well, you know what that sounds like, blur,
Yes.
right? Now, the opposite is also true. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and we feel great, right? You slept good, pleasant dreams, life is good, you drive to work, the traffic jam
Yes.
doesn't bother you, you get to your work, hey guys, hey, what's up, how's it going? Because you're in that automatically good mood, then of course your behavior is good and your results are going to be good. But in NLP, we say, well, what if you could choose your emotional state? Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to feel blur? Because last time that I checked, it feels good to feel good, right? So, what if we could manage our emotional state? And of course, the answer is yes, of course we can, right? The way to change your emotional state is to change your thinking, right? To have more positive thinking, or to use what Tony calls the physiology of excellence, right? Shoulders back, head up, standing as if you were totally confident. And by the way, confidence is an emotional state. So when you're more confident throughout your day, your behaviors and your results are going to be much, much better. So in NLP, they teach us some tools to more effectively manage our emotional state. Why? Because the higher our emotional state, the better the results that we achieve in life. Now, this leads automatically to the next question. Okay, Luke, how can I change my thoughts?
Yes.
Right?
This was
Well, this
exactly
is
in
where the
my mind to ask. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, and this is where the P in neuro-linguistic programming comes in. So L is linguistic, right? And P is the program that we have here, and our brain is just like the computer that I'm looking at right now. Our brain is like the hardware, if you like, the human operating system. And the words that we use are programming this program. So if we use negative language, such as, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent because I don't have a university degree, I'm not worthy, and all of this kind of negative self talk, then with enough repetition, that becomes the belief system. And our belief systems are what we believe to be true. But belief systems are not fact. They're based on repetition, 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 generally of whatever we heard in our environment when we were younger, right? And so even though our parents did the best that they could, and whether you agree with their parenting practices or not, our program is a product of the past, right? Now, if you're not happy with your program, well, using the tools and techniques of NLP, you can upgrade the software. The human operating system can be upgraded. And you want to be able to
Reprogram it, right?
change
Yeah.
those negative self-talk into positive language. I am smart enough. I am creative. I will find a way, right? Like I am handsome and beautiful, and the world is a safe place. And all of these positive thoughts with repetition, repetition, repetition begins to retrain the program, right? And it does take focus and it does take repetition. You can't just listen to one self-help YouTube video and expect to be fixed overnight. No, it's going to take the repetition, repetition, repetition. And I promise you, if people have the discipline and the courage, right? Because it is a step outside of the comfort zone. But remember, it's outside of the comfort zone. That's the stuff that we don't know yet, that if we did know, would help us to grow to that next level of success. And, the good news is we've never lived in a time on planet Earth where we've had so much information available to us. Right. So there are books to read. As you mentioned, you read Tony Robbins' books there. There are good quality YouTube content that it's available for free. You can attend an NLP workshop. You can come and visit me in Thailand anytime. And, you can work one-on-one with the coach as well. So there are literally unlimited resources available for everyone to be able to take that first step, but they've got to want it. Right? They've got to want it. If they don't want it, then they're just going to stay in their comfort zone and they're going to continue to blame and finger point and say things like, I'm so unlucky, or my favorite one, oh, it must be my karma. Right?
Yes.
Now, without, I understand and appreciate there's different religions around the world and karma may or may not be true. But one thing is for sure, if I'm blaming a past life for this life's unluckiness, well, sorry, you're a passenger and you're no longer in the driver's seat. And someone like that, they're always going to be complaining and feel stuck in their life. And I have all of the empathy in the world for those people. Why? Because I've been there. Before I discovered NLP, I was one of those people. For me, it was reading a book. The very, very first inspirational book that I read, it was called Traveling with Power. It was a book by Ken Eaglefeather, and it spoke about the Toltec traditions. So you may have heard of a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. He talks about these Toltec traditions. Toltec were an ancient civilization, I think before the Mayans in South America. They were basically, yes, it's wild. When I read these books on the Toltec traditions now, it's ancient NLP. It's NLP from like 2000 years ago. It blew my mind when I picked up a book recently to read through it again. And so that was the book that inspired me to get out of my comfort zone and begin to create the life that I want, rather than just being a passenger in the back seat.
Wonderful. Look, I want to go back to what you mentioned about repetition. I remember even at our training, you were talking about something called incantation, right?
Yes, yes.
So for the benefit of our listeners, can you explain what an incantation is about and how we can frame an incantation to actually change our state of mind?
Absolutely. So Tony Robbins, I learned this technique from Tony Robbins, which again, Tony Robbins is a master of NLP, so it's all NLP. An incantation is simply a positive phrase that we repeat out loud to change our emotional state. The added benefit of doing an incantation with repetition every day is that you begin to reprogram the software. The human operating system gets reprogrammed because of what we focus on and because of what we continually repeat again and again and again. And the subconscious mind it's an interesting thing because it doesn't know right or wrong, good or bad, or even past or future. It only knows right now. So when you repeat this incantation with a little bit of emotional intensity, the subconscious mind is suddenly paying attention. And it's like, yes, hello, boss. How can I serve you? And so when you use this positive language, then the reprogramming process begins. Now, I'm sure most of your listeners have heard of affirmations before. So an affirmation is kind of similar. Like you could say to yourself, I am happy, I am happy, I am happy, I am happy. But deep down, the body does not believe it, right? So you're kind of like, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. But because we haven't changed our physiology, it doesn't register in the subconscious mind and it doesn't register in our neurology. So an incantation is you not only speak it, but you embody it with your entire physiology. And I'm really pleased that you can remember that technique, Yaz, from all those years ago. And I still do it today, right? Number one, I'm usually doing it within the first 15 or 20 minutes, right? And I'm doing that to help the audience get out of their comfort zone, number one. Number two, it's to highlight the importance of a growth mindset, but I want them to feel how they feel after the incantation and after they get out of their comfort zone, right? When I'm on the lead up to it, I'm framing it and I'm explaining it, and people are starting to think, what is this? Like, where's the door? Is it lunchtime yet? I think I need to leave. And, I joke and I say, all right, lock the doors, all right. And so I've got my whole process to get the buy-in, and I pace and lead the audience to get them to a more motivated state.
Look, what is your most commonly used incantation in this situation?
Yeah, so the one we did back then, it's the same one that I've been doing for 10 plus years now. Let me say it first, and then I'll show you the actions as well.
Yes.
So the language is quite simple. All I need is within me now. I am confident. I can do it. Yes. Right. Now, let's just look at the language here for a moment. Think about this. All I need is within me now. So I mean everything, all of the intelligence, all of the creativity, all of the leadership skills, all of the influence, all of the emotional state, all of the confidence, all of the passion, everything I need is within me now. I don't have to go looking for it. Where's my confidence? Did I leave my confidence over there somewhere? Where's my passion? What did I? No, all I need is within me now. I am confident. I can do it. Yes. And then we need to do the actions as well.
Yes.
So I would say, and of course, we would do this standing up. I say, all I need is within me now. I am confident. I can do it. And then a big punch. Yes. Right. And then, if I'm doing a full day training, we'll do that 2 or 3 times throughout the day. Once at the beginning to get everyone out of their comfort zone, and it's good. It's a good test for me to see if the audience are following my instructions. right? And what I found with whatever level of leadership that I've done, whether it's like super high level C-suite or anywhere in between, if I can get them to do that within 20 minutes, it literally blows their mind. And so now they have a growth mindset and they're ready to learn what I'm actually about to share with them, which for most of my training, these NLP techniques, these coaching techniques, they are techniques that people don't know that they don't know.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine if they all have a fixed mindset, I could have the best content in the world, but if they have a closed, rigid mindset, then they're not going to absorb any of it. So that first 20 or 30 minutes is to really blow the glass ceiling out, get them out of their comfort zone, get them to appreciate that, oh, yeah, this growth mindset is a pretty important thing. Okay, I'll listen. And, then they're going to participate and engage throughout. And then usually I'll do it again after lunch, right? What happens? Most of these workshops are at a beautiful resort in Maldives or somewhere here in Thailand. It's an international buffet. People come back after the break and they are food coma. And they look like this.
Yeah.
They're ready for a nap. So I'll say, all right, everybody stand up, and then we'll wake them up. So it's a very, very powerful technique. And of course, if someone's seeing or hearing this for the first time, they're probably thinking, oh, how silly is this? Like, how old do you think I am? That's for my children. Tony Robbins still does it. He's 60 something years old now. He still does it backstage because he doesn't hope to be in a good state. He demands it of himself, right?
Yes.
He wants to be on his A game. And so this incantation, because it's positive language, yes? And we're using a physiology of excellence. Well, that's the synergy. The positive thoughts, the positive body language creates that peak emotional state. And from that peak emotional state comes awesome actions and amazing results. And I'm doing the same, still before my workshops or my one-on-ones and before my podcasts, I'm absolutely going to put myself in a peak state so I can be on my A game.
Wonderful explanation. Look, I think you have beautifully explained your work, but I also want to touch base a little bit on the theme of my podcast and the series which I'm working on now is called Unretirable, which is because I have identified people like you who has found a bigger purpose in their life, and then
Yes.
you are passionate about it, and so you don't have to retire at the traditional way, right? So let's deep a little bit about how your journey began and what led actually, what emotions or what situations in your life led you to actually find this path and stay on it.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, before I share my story, I love the title, Unretirable. And I actually factor that into my growth mindset topic at the beginning of my workshops. The question I'll ask is this: has anyone have a family member or friend where maybe they retired a little bit early? Maybe they were lucky and they retired at 60 years old. I say, what generally happens to those people after 1 or 2 years?
Yeah.
I said, does their happiness go up or does their happiness go down? And I'll let the audience tell me. And they'll say, oh, it happened with my grandfather. He was miserable, right, after they retired. And I said, so what's going on there? Why are the majority of people, when they retire, after a year or so, they are not happy? Their happiness and fulfillment have gone down. Why? And I asked the audience. And for the first year after they retire, though, it's okay, right? They're playing golf 8 days a week. They're going on beautiful holidays to the Maldives and around. They're eating at these glorious 5-star buffets also 8 days a week. But after about a year of that, no, their happiness and fulfillment begins to decline. The main reason why is they've stopped feeding this. They've stopped growing, right? So think about this. Children, when children are born, they learn to crawl and they learn to walk and they learn to talk and they ask all of these questions. Daddy, daddy, mummy, mummy, why this, why that? They're curious. As children, we have this growth mindset built in to us. What happens though, as we get older, and especially the more successful we are, we think we know everything, right? So we think we know everything. So now we've gone from a growth mindset to a fixed mindset. We forget there's still a ton of stuff out there that we don't know that we don't know. And so
Yes.
because we stop feeding this, because we stop growing intellectually and spiritually and emotionally, our happiness and fulfillment will decline, because one of our purposes on this beautiful planet is to continually evolve and grow. So regardless of how old you are, there's always something that you don't know that you don't know. And the good news is there's a concept called neuroplasticity, which
Yes.
means we can learn new things forever.
Irrespective
This,
of my age, isn't it? Because
yeah, there's this,
I hear all the time people saying that I'm too old for that. I'm too old to learn
yep,
this.
which
Yeah.
is a limiting belief, right? And remember, Henry Ford says it, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And older people are buying into this lie of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's not true. Neuroplasticity from neuroscience tells us that as long as we're learning something new and we're doing new activities, these neurons will continue to fire and wire together again. It's only when we sit around and
When
do
people say this
nothing.
to me, you can't teach old tricks, new dogs, new tricks. I tell, are we dogs?
Yeah, that's exactly. So what you've experienced there is that's what limiting beliefs sound like. When people say, I can't do this, it's not true. Or I'm too old for this, it's not true. But with enough repetition, they believe it to be true. And then now that they're stuck and they're unhappy and they won't be able to move forward. So that's the first part I wanted to say. Yeah, going back to my journey, so I did not go to university. In fact, straight out of school, I went and worked in manufacturing for 10 years, pretty much. The first company was Procter and Gamble, P&G. I worked on a production line in a factory with no windows, and I was packing boxes and day after day after day. You know, the Vicks vapor rub, the one that smells really, really nice. I was packaging that. And then Procter and Gamble, they moved out of Australia. I went to another manufacturing company. This time, though, I was a production manager. So I did get into a leadership role, leading a team of about 20. This time, there are 5 production lines. So there are boxes everywhere, boxes, boxes, boxes. And after 10 years, I started to think to myself, you know, there must be more to life than packing boxes in a factory. And it was reading that very, very first book that shifted something in me. You know, one of the concepts that I remember vividly was this concept called metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to observe your thoughts, right? So, you know, and we all get lost in our thoughts sometime, but we can also be the observer of our thoughts. Well, then the next question is, what is it that's observing our thoughts? Like, is that soul? Is that spirit? Like, is that another part of the brain? Like, what is that? And I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I thought, what is this voodoo? What is this magic? And as I went through this book, I just discovered this insatiable hunger to want to learn more. And I knew that something in my life had to change. Back then, I was drinking too much. I had like a hot rod car, and I was spending all my spare money on this car. But, you know, towards this time when I discovered this book, I wasn't passionate about doing the car anymore. And so I actually sold the car, this hot rod thing. And so now I had this money, and then I was introduced to my very, very first personal development seminar. And I had no idea what to expect. I was so green. I was so shy. I was so introvert. You know, I remember before a workshop starts, everyone's sitting outside having their coffee or whatever at the staging area there. I'd be the guy in the far corner, hoping that no one would come to talk to me. So painfully shy. And I remember when I went into the room, you know, the facilitator, his name was Luis Cordoba from South America somewhere, Colombia he was, yeah. He said, you'll get out of this workshop whatever you put into it. And to get the maximum out of it, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, which was the very, very first time I heard about this concept called the comfort zone. They didn't really call it a growth mindset back then, but same thing. So I just went for it. I had nothing to lose. And so I just went all in. I played at 200%. It was very, very uncomfortable because a lot of it was personal interaction and deep sharing about stuff and Anyway, it was a 4-day program, and I'll never forget, on that Sunday night, my mind was blown. It was like every neuron in my body was electric, was alive. And it was like before the workshop, it was like looking at the world in black and white. And then on that Sunday, the colors, everything was vivid. And I was just like, whoa, what is going on here? I thought, I want more of this. Long story short, they had an advanced program in Chicago in a couple of months' time. And I thought, I'm going to Chicago. So I booked time off work. I was going to take a little bit of a trip around the US, and I was going to go to this advanced workshop. As the time was getting closer, I was about 4 weeks from flying out of Australia. I got called into the office, and I'm at this, I'm in the production manager role now in this other factory. And it was a family-run company, and the boss says to me, listen, Luke, you attended this personal development workshop a month or so back, and, we got to say that you're definitely having more positive energy. The production numbers are up. Things are looking good. But, Luke, you're about to go to America. And I don't know, Luke, we just know that this job isn't for you anymore. We don't sense your passion about this job anymore. And so today is your last day. You're fired. And I was like, what now? Now, here's what's interesting, Iaz. I'm just going to jump around the timeline a little bit. When I eventually learned NLP at its foundation level, I learned all the mechanics of NLP. I could see that very first workshop that I attended, it was all NLP, but they did not call it NLP. They called it the experience because it was all experiential learning, hardly any note-taking whatsoever. But I learned all those years later that was NLP. And one of the techniques they did teach was called reframing.
Yes.
Now, reframing is basically how to do positive thinking. And you can use reframing in the moment during a negative event, or you can do it on an event that happened in the past where you still have negative thinking and negative emotion about it. So very simply, the process is asking a couple of empowering questions to shift our point of view about that event, which we thought was negative, right? And let me give another example in here. Iaz, have you ever had some kind of negative event that happened in the past, right? And then as time went on, maybe it's 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years later, we look back on that event and we think, actually, that was probably good luck. In fact,
Yes.
that was a crossroads in my life. And what seemed bad at the time, now, upon reflection, it was maybe the best thing that ever happened to me. Have you had something like that happen in your life?
I've had numerous events like that. And I've started believing that anything which happens for the good.
Exactly, which is a positive belief.
I tell people in the moment of it happening, we might think that it is something bad which is happening to us, but might be that's in the bigger plan of things. That is something which has to happen for something good to receive in your life.
Exactly. So we know it happens over time, right? Let's say 3 years later, and it's like, oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So what's happening in that 3 years? We get that bigger picture. We get those new perspectives. We get to see that event from a different perspective or a different point of view. Now, the event itself is the same. So the only thing that changed is our thinking and our perception on that event. So then my question is, well, why wait 3 years? What if we can apply these principles of reflection and looking from a different perspective Get the lessons and the learnings now to be able to let it go and literally transform the negative event into the positive event. And so that's what happened with me in this. Here I am in the middle of the meeting. They're telling me, Luke, you're fired. Now, it was a small family-run company. I'm actually having a few tears 25 years ago. But then I remember these principles, and there are basically 3 golden questions you can ask yourself to reframe, to look from a different perspective. And the first one is, what could be good about this event, right? Because remember, the event is always neutral. Initially, our negative thinking about the event is, okay, whatever, based on my programming and my past experience and the shock of the event or whatever. But with each question, I'm looking from a different perspective. So I asked myself, okay, Luke, I'm getting my butt kicked out the door here. They said, pack your office, you're out today. What could be good about this? Well, what could be good? Well, the truth is they were right. I was not passionate about that job anymore. I was a little bit afraid to get out of my comfort zone because I had a mortgage, right? And it actually paid pretty good. And well, now they've made the decision for me. So, okay, that could be good. What else could be good? What else could be good? Well, in Australia, we call it a golden handshake or a severance pay. Because they kick you out immediately, they have to pay you. So I got 3,000 Aussie dollars. Okay. What else could be good? Well, I was going to go to America and go to this advanced workshop and travel around a bit. Maybe I can travel for longer. Maybe I could do a 1 year around the world adventure. What else could be good? What else could be good? Then the second question is, what can I learn from that event? Right? What can I learn from that event? So, okay, Luke, what can I learn from this event? Well, it is important for me to be passionate about my work. And they were right. I was not passionate anymore. What else can I learn about that? Well, definitely my life's work is not packing boxes, right? So I was, having a very tight comfort zone. What else could I learn? What else could I learn? What else could I learn? And the final question was, what would I do differently next time? So, okay, Luke, I'm getting fired here. What would I do differently next time? Well, I think next time, if I realize that I was not passionate about this thing anymore, that I won't wait for them to kick me out. I will consciously choose to move on myself. So I have more control over the situation rather than just getting kicked out. What else would I do differently? What else would I do differently? And because of that, yes, I went from a 10 out of 10 negative thinking, negative emotion down to about a 2. Right there in the middle of the meeting as I was applying this NLP technique to myself. Now, I was still a little bit shocked, of course. I was still about a 2 or a 3. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? But it was really interesting. The next thing I did was I went back to the travel agent and I said, listen, can I, because I hadn't paid for the ticket yet. We were still in discussion. I said, is there such a thing as like an around the world trip? And she said, yeah, tell me where you want to go. She said, we have this special offer. It's a 12-month around the world trip. You can stop at 15 destinations and it's only $500 more expensive than your flights to Chicago and back. And I'm like, wow, no brainer. So I bought the ticket and I forced myself out of my comfort zone. I did have a house with a mortgage, but I found a tenant and put my tenant in there. I sold the car. I locked up some other stuff, sent it to my parents or whatever. And then so for 1 year, I just backpacked around the world with the purpose of getting out of my comfort zone to discover more things about me, about what I did want to do with my life. And of course, to have these beautiful experiences in these different countries with different culture and so on. And so I traveled for 1 year and then eventually arrived to Thailand. Now, an interesting thing happened when I arrived to Thailand. Basically, I had a one-way ticket left from Bangkok back to Sydney. Thailand was my last stop. I couldn't change the ticket anymore. I changed a few destinations and dates. I could do that on the way, but by this time I couldn't change anything. Bangkok to Sydney was the final flight. And I'd grown so much years over that 1 year of traveling. I mean, and you might remember I'm quite tall, right? So I'm 2 meters tall. I didn't grow even taller. What I did was I grew here, and I grew in here with my experiences. And I thought, I don't want to go back home. What am I going to do? And so I got offered a job teaching English in Bangkok. I got offered a job teaching English in South Korea. And then I got offered a job working in a resort in Koh Samui, Thailand. And the reason that came about was because some of the people that were involved in that workshop that I attended in Sydney, a group of those people who were kind of facilitating and running the workshop, they put their money together to buy a resort in Koh Samui. And
Wow.
I'd stayed in contact with them while I was backpacking around the world. So they knew that I was in Bangkok. They said, hey, Luke, we're looking for someone to help manage. So now I've got these three options, not knowing what to do. What do? I called my mother and I said, Mum, what do you think I should do? I've got these three options. And being a great mother, of course, she said, well, I think you should come home. And I said, Mum, I love you too. I said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for this job in Koh Samui. I want to be around those people that helped me to break through at that seminar. So long story short, they offered me $200 per month, which in Thailand we say nit noi, that's a small amount, to go down to Koh Samui. And I knew nothing about hotels. I do not have a hospitality degree. So at $200 a month, I started, and then I worked hard. I had a great boss. His name was Ole Larsen. He was like a Viking, and he kicked my butt so damn hard, which is exactly what I needed back then. And I eventually grew up to become a general manager of a 5-star boutique resort. And so that journey was a total of 10 years. But something interesting happened, Iaz. At that last hotel, I was hired as the GM. In the early days, when I got there, it was a mess. It was like family run. There were no systems and processes. It was just kind of all over the place. So I put the systems and processes in place. I hired some people. I fired some people. I coached, trained, and mentored the team. And after about a year, it was running like a well-oiled machine. Thankfully, my salary had gone up. I was on about $5,000 per month. I could eat in the restaurant 8 times per day. I could look out on the Gulf of Thailand with the turquoise water and the coconut trees and the white sandy beaches. And so in theory, life was looking pretty good. But here's the thing. My happiness and fulfillment started to go down. Right. So I was working like a dog. I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. There was no such thing as work-life balance. And more than anything, though, yes, I'd stopped feeding this. I'd stopped reading books. I'd stopped going to workshops. And so my happiness and fulfillment went down because I wasn't growing. And then I remembered the lesson and the learning that I got from working in the factory that said, if I'm not passionate about my work anymore, I will decide that I'm going to change. And then that's exactly what I did. I thought long and hard about what is it that I'm most passionate about? At what point in my life have I been most happy? And the answer, day 4 of that original training back in Sydney, all of those years ago, that was when I felt most alive. So I just decided in that moment, I want to be a coach and a trainer. That's it. I decide. And then I moved up to Bangkok, and then here we are doing coaching and training, the mission that I think that I've been put on this planet for.
What a great journey, isn't it? So what is future look like for you now from where you are now?
Yeah, so coming back to your theme right now, what is it called? Unretired? Yeah, I love it. So as you know, 60 to 65 years old is the time that most people retire. And I said to my wife, like, I don't want to wait until then to start living. I don't want to wait till then to start enjoying. And, we were living in Bangkok at the time, and we agreed that we both love nature. We both love, wildlife. We are not a fan of the city. And so we started to look for some property for sale in Thailand. And during the COVID years, where we couldn't fly out. We did road trips all around Thailand, up to the north to Chiang Mai, down to Phuket, and you name it, every area we went. And then we finally found a little bit of land. It's near a place called Hua Hin, which is 3 hours south of Bangkok, and then inland about 1 hour. And we found this little piece of land, about 2 acres. It's connected to this beautiful little river. And it was just jungle when we bought it. And I'm not an architect and I don't know how to design stuff. I don't know any of that stuff. So it was another leap outside of our comfort zone. But we bit the bullet. We got the land all decked out. They put rocks down by the river to protect it if it floods. We got a little bungalow built there, about 120 square meter. It overlooks the river. It's nice and high, so it will never flood. And we just love it. Yes, whenever we can go down there and just hear the sounds of these birds, there must be 50 different variety of birds flying around. We've seen river otters. We've seen, every now and then a raft with people will come down. I mean, it's just a little piece of paradise. And it was one of the best decisions we made, right? So we get down there just as often as we can. And because this is the kind of thing, I didn't want to wait till retirement to experience that. I want to do it right now. Like, when we're in training mode and we're working, excuse my language, but we work our asses off. We're traveling a lot and I'm on my feet for 10 hours a day. We work really, really hard. And so we want to enjoy our life. We don't want to wait till retirement. And so, the future for us is working more with the kind of clients that we want to work with.
It's all
And
about
what do I mean by that?
integration now, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
even
now,
work-life balance. It's more about work-life integration.
exactly. I call it work-life harmony, right? Now, don't get me wrong. We are very blessed with the clients that we've partnered with and worked with up until this point in time. And our existing clients, our partners, we call them, they are the best. They know what they want. They know we can deliver. And then we find that thing and then we do it. It's sometimes when a new client is coming on board and we've got to do the whole song and dance with them. We've got to meet them 6 different times. I've got to do a demo about my training style and it's bouncing around between HR and VP and all of this kind of stuff. For me, even though I respect that process, it's not really a fun game for me to play anymore. So I love it when I can connect with the decision maker, which in most cases is the COO, the CEO, or the MD. And if I can connect with that person who has a similar mindset that I do, which is really at its most fundamental, a growth mindset. I know that if the big boss has a growth mindset and we can connect, then it's really, really easy. And for me, it's a fun game to play, right? Even though it's hard work and we're on our feet and we're doing our thing, if I can get someone who's aligned and we have this co-creation process and then deliver on that, whoa, that is really, really rewarding. So I think more like that. And one question, again, given the title of your theme, Christy, my wife and I, we're starting to have the discussion now about where do we want to retire. And, we've actually jokingly said, I don't think we could ever retire. We're going to have to do something to keep this going. So it will probably be writing books of some form, Iaz. It might be doing, keynote speeches. I'd love to be flown around the world and be able to charge, I don't know, $20,000 for a couple of hours gig. I think I could handle that. So probably more of that in those twilight years. But yeah, reading books, continuing to travel. I love to, when we can deliver a training in a new country that we've not been to before, then we do the training and then we explore that country for a week, which is what we just did in Cambodia a couple of months ago. And then we did it in Saudi Arabia as well. We delivered the training in Saudi and then we went and explored Jordan for like 10 days or something like that. So I love to combine a training with some exploring on that same trip. For me, that is a fun game to play.
Exactly. That is creating that work-life harmony, right?
It is the work-life harmony. this little house we have here in Hua Hin now, it's 3 hours away. Like, we just finished about 15 days, almost back-to-back training, a couple of gaps here and there, but we do our best now to batch that work together. So when we are in Bangkok, it's bop, 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 bop. Dogs have a backyard to round in. I've got a little swimming pool I can have a swim in. We can still do podcasts and webinars, and I can still do my coaching down here. We're just connected to that nature, what we really, really love. So, yeah, I would say more of what we're doing, but with the people that we really, really want to do it with, the people that are decisive when they know what they want. And then it's the co-creation process. That is so uplifting for me.
Wonderful, look. It's been really a pleasure, and I'm really happy and excited actually to see you after so long. I've been following you and commenting to your LinkedIn posts and stuff like that, but we haven't had a real conversation like this for some time. Maybe I'll plan out to come over to Bangkok, or maybe you will come over to Maldives in the future. We'll make that happen in a way.
Absolutely. I would love the opportunity to come back to the
Yes.
Maldives. So, yeah, if you've got any partners or friends over there who are running hotels,
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm the man. We'll find out a win-win. I'll stay
Yeah.
on an extra week. We'll work out something very, very favorable.
Can you tell our audience how they can connect with you if they want, and from where they can easily find you?
Yeah, the easiest is probably on LinkedIn. So if they just search Luke Salway, Salway, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'll be very, very happy to connect with people there. Or Coachology.com. That's our website. It shows the trainings and coachings that we offer. As I mentioned, we do train all around the region. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, would love to visit you over there. And really, really nice to see you too, Iaz. I really appreciate the opportunity to reconnect after all of these years, and great to hear that you're still implementing these NLP tools and that you're continuing to have success and continuing to grow. So thank you as well.
Thank you, Luke. We'll talk some other time.
Yes, look forward to it, my friends. You take care now. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
And for my audience, this has been a very encouraging and uplifting episode for me personally, and I hope it is for you as well. And like I mentioned, I connected with Luke after so long, but still I can remember the techniques, the incantations and stuff like that. And this really helps. And I think this episode leaves you with some techniques which you can apply immediately in your life and make a difference. And until we come back next time, don't forget to ride the waves of wisdom, and don't forget to be awesome. Thank you.